Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another YouTube video. I am All In Crypto, and today we're going to be diving into the mysterious world of Ripple, Brad, and Chris versus the SEC. Now, this case has become infinitely more relevant due to the actions that we saw the SEC take last week in regards to launching complaints against Binance, one of which was the selling and facilitating of purchasing of unregulated securities, and of course, a similar story with Coinbase. And within those complaints, we saw a list of cryptocurrencies that the SEC is essentially implying are securities in the same way, perhaps, that they've done so with XRP in relation to Ripple, Brad, and Chris. So this case is very interesting. It's very important because it's not just a fight for the individuals involved. It's a fight for the broader space, if nothing more importantly, for clarity. Right now, there is a regulatory gap, which is where we're going to start this video off, that there's a number of things that have came out in the Hinman documents. There's a lot of stuff with Ethereum and Vitalik Buterin, which we'll explore, of course, and the kind of dodginess around that. But there's also a real contradiction between what was said and what is now being enforced. And we've actually said that we think there's a silver lining in all of this, all these lawsuits. It doesn't seem it now. But that is that we're going to get some sort of regulatory clarity. I think in places like America, which are very big on control, you're not going to have a crypto industry that really exists outside of regulations. And actually, there's pros and cons in that, of course, but it's part of mainstream adoption in somewhere like America, Europe, and certainly the UK where I am. So we're going to cover what's gone on, what's been said, some comments, what was involved in the Hinman case, some kind of interesting things to do with Hinman himself and Vitalik, and of course Vitalik selling 70,000 Ethereum later on down the road, and the kind of contradictions that we see and sort of rounding it all up. But I want to start with the regulatory gap that this is essentially encouraging in regards to the lack of clarification or the lack of applicability that the current framework for what a security is has potentially to the crypto space. So this is from Paul.eth. So I am Paul Grewal. The regulatory gap, proof from the Hinman emails of what we've been saying to the Third Circuit, to Congress and the SEC itself, that securities laws are incomplete when it comes to digital assets, that securities laws aren't meant to rule over all digital assets, and that many digital assets are not securities. So this has been taken from the Hinman emails. While we agree that a central purpose of the Securities Acts is to address an information asymmetry, I think that we worry that it does not follow that there is no longer an asymmetry once a network becomes decentralized. There likely are still people who have far more information, i.e. Buterin likely has far more information than retail purchasers of Ethereum. In fact, disclosure is likely to still be important to purchase, and to disclose could help address the information asymmetry that is likely to continue to persist for some time after decentralization. But the bigger point is that it is no longer an investment contract once there are no efforts of others to point to. Plus, without a group of control, there's no one to hold responsible for providing this disclosure. The fact that a token of a sufficiently decentralized network are no longer securities and no longer are required to register, with all the benefits to investors of registration, seem to point out what might be considered the regulatory gap that exists in the space. So this is what Paul's talking about here. We all know it. It's my personal thinking that you can't apply something that came out in the 1900s. Sorry, not the 1900s. 90 something to the 1900s, sorry, to something that the world today. I just don't think it's applicable, and this is the regulatory gap. Very interesting what's been said here, because if you look at something like, let's use Cardano or Ethereum, or it could be any network really, if it's sufficiently decentralized, which many of these are, some more than others, then this is essentially saying it's not a security and that there's not a framework. There's a grey area in regards to where these fall that's, not accounted for by either the CFTC or the SEC. And we can see actually these two industries very much locked in a battle with one another over all this. So in other words, this speech acknowledges that there is an other category. It's not a security because there's no control group, at least in the Howey sense. Yet, like many other things, medication, credit cards, there may be need to regulation to protect purchasers. So this is very interesting straight off the bat, because I think people have been working on this definition, and the SEC are maybe now saying that this is not the case. They're trying to exclude the third-party narrative from their judgment of something. And actually, if you look at, for Cardano, for example, as a blockchain, you guys will know that I like. We like Algorand. We're a big fan of crypto in general. And of course, we have our favorites. But a lot of these networks are sufficiently decentralized just because they have somebody working, or it could be multiple groups that are working on the protocol. Anybody can contribute. And who do you really go after and say, okay, well, this is the whole thing with XRP and Brad, Chris, and Ripple, is essentially what they're saying is that they were in control of everything. And they're saying, no, the XRP ledger existed way before we did. We just have a big stake in it, but so do other people. And that you can't say, we're using it as a security and selling it, even though they did use it to fundraise, which is very common. Vitalik himself did the exact same thing in similarity with XRP, yet he was given this free pass. This is just fascinating stuff, guys. Hopefully I'm not boring anyone, because this is going to be quite a long one. Let's move on to some of Brad's comments today in regards to the whole thing. Very interesting. He's been very vocal as always. I found Brad's been pretty vocal across the board. It's absolutely inconceivable that a regulator, when presented with so much pushback on what he was about to say, how he complied this fake test in the first place, decided to move forwards anyway and throw an entire industry into chaos. He then goes on to say, for the SEC to sue Chris and myself personally for allegedly selling unregistered securities when their own division head deliberately created confusion about this, well, I don't have a single polite word to describe this. Seeing the depth in which the SEC has essentially weaponized the lack of regulatory clarity through enforcement actions since this speech was given, it's no surprise that we can call bluff on their claims to just come in and register as nothing but bad faith. So this was something that was put out by Stuart. It's well worth a watch. I'll leave a link to it in the description. It's very interesting because, again, that's what they went after Chris and Brad and Ripple for, yet Vitalik did the exact same thing. However, the difference here is that Bill seemed to have a real favoring towards Vitalik, asking the Ethereum founder for advice on the up-and-coming speech, only to talk about it in his speech, that they can't see a third-party promoter. Looks a little clumsy to me. Oh, remember, didn't believe ETHGATE was real. Fact, before making a blank statement on ETH, the SEC went to Buterin or his counsel to discuss what I thought determining if the asset was a security or not was based on law. If Bill and or the chairman's office wants to make blanket statements that Ethereum is not a security, barring any changes of thought based on the meeting later this week with Buterin of his counsel, we will need to discuss this further. Very interesting. And talking, about fundraising, let's just play this quick clip of Vitalik very quickly.
I presume that your net worth crashed a great deal. It got run up and then came back down.
It did, yeah.
And were you happy in any way about that?
Relieved.
Relieved.
Yeah. So when right at the top of the big bubble, like in December 2017, when Bitcoin was hitting 20,000, ETH was hitting 1,400. I made this tweet, a series of tweets, and that kind of became somewhat famous within the space, where I basically said, the cryptocurrency space has reached $500 billion. Does it deserve it? Like, do the things that it's actually accomplished, like, hold a candle to the promises that the market is ascribing to it? And I mean, the subtext of my answer is not yet, and I was proven very right fairly quickly. But
you didn't short it, did you?
So I did get the Ethereum Foundation to sell about 70,000 ETH, like basically at the top, and that's doubled our runway now. So, and it was one good decision that had that.
Okay, we lost the sound there, but yeah, you can see Vitalik essentially did the exact same thing that Brad and Chris were doing, perhaps not to the same degree or with the same kind of blatantness, but you can see a double standard showing here, and you can see that Hinman very much favored in his speech Vitalik over many of the other industry and created this gray area that the SEC is acknowledging isn't even there. The confusion is so warranted on all of this in regards to regulatory clarity, and these documents are proving it. Talking about this regulatory gap, talking about this kind of other category that could apply to crypto, yet not giving any guidance on it and going after people for who knows what sake. I do think that XRP are going to win this lawsuit. You guys know that we've been talking technically about it. We think technically it does very well. You can go and watch the Snipers video for that. And that suggests that they're going to win the lawsuit. And I think the cards are very much stacked in their favor. This is not, by the way, me shitting on Vitalik or Ethereum. I'm just highlighting a clear confusion that's present here and favoring and discrepancy in what's being said. And actually, the SEC tried pretty damn hard to conceal all this. So Hinman didn't even know what exactly the Ethereum Foundation does a few days before his speech and still had to quickly check with Vitalik, probably the night before the speech. A bit clumsy given the monopoly he gave Ethereum. Absolutely, guys. It's very interesting, all this stuff. And this is the kind of ETHGATE rumor that we're getting into. Last one, guys, the footnotes for the extract on page 64 is footnote 41. Here is the redacted version. The SEC 2018 did not think lockups were relevant and were a non-security, then changed its mind. The materials will be relevant in other crypto cases. Here he goes on to say, whether a person or group retains a stake or other interest in the digital assets such that it would be motivated to expend efforts to cause an increase in its value in digital assets does not seem relevant. Anybody could do that. I have a stake in a crypto. I'm going to champion it and I'm going to do things to try and get the price up. I'm pretty sure 99% of crypto Twitter does that, and YouTube and everything in between. Of course, you want your investment to do well, right? With SEC arguing that XRP is a security because Ripple was XRP's largest stakeholder and therefore had economic incentives to make the price of XRP go up. Lockups for developers, promoters are of a non-security digital asset, with SEC arguing that XRP is a security due to founder lockup. So lots of contradicting here. You can kind of understand that actually that's probably going to go on if you're trying to figure something new out. But the real question is here, is there an ulterior motive to all this? Have they given Ethereum a monopoly for whatever reason and not held it to the same standards as XRP? And actually, this could be the very thing, potentially, that throws this case off, because it shows clear favorism that's given and contradictions along the line. So this is a big deal. XRP's price, a word of warning, guys. Big events, typically people buy on the run up to and sell on. So I know lots of people trying to long XRP this morning. Hey, a couple of times it'll work, but the majority of the time, people aren't buying on the news. Insiders are always privy to early information. On that note, if you guys want me to start covering XRP more, I know there's a huge following out there. I've actually been an XRP buyer. I wouldn't say hodler because I got a bit fed up with all the kind of crazy, $568 predictions for XRP and the things that were made up. A lot of it actually seems like, they are doing very well. And I do think there's likely, or there would be an obvious choice for remittance markets around the world and partnering with the likes of Swift. And we know they're ISO 20022 compliant, et cetera, et cetera. But if you guys want more XRP Ripple content, perhaps more regularly, let me know in the comment section, and we're always happy to accommodate. This is going to be very interesting. We're going to keep you up to date on the lawsuit because of just how relevant it is to the entire space at this moment in time. On that note, I'm going to love and leave you. Enjoy the content, guys. Enjoy your Tuesdays, and I'll see you all in the next one.